Alright, so get this. In the vast continent of Argathia, a brutal, long-running war finally came to an end. This was all thanks to the queen, who succeeded in finding the legendary treasure of the god, uniting the continent and bringing an era of peace. But then, things went sideways. The queen suddenly fell into a deep sleep and vanished, and the treasure. It disappeared right along with her, taking the god's protection with it. Just like that, the unification crumbled, and Argathia was shattered into pieces once again. Centuries have passed since then, and the quest to find the treasure of the god is still ongoing. To be honest, most people have given up hope, but in one particular kingdom, this quest has become a massive national event held every single year. And in honor of the long-lost queen, they call this journey Aire. We open on our Princess Elda, and she's in the middle of a serious sparring session with her general. The general is impressed, complimenting her moves, but he suggests she use a lighter weapon. The one she's wielding seems way too heavy for her. She just tells him that the weapon is their kingdom's symbol, and of course she has to be a master with it. He can't help but ask why she's pushing herself so hard lately. She plays it cool, saying it's nothing. Elaborating, she's being sold off in an arranged marriage to some unknown place. She has to be ready for anything, while she ducks and dodges a swing, completely surprising the general. She uses her shield to knock the sword right out of his hand and presses the tip of her own blade to his neck. But she's not satisfied winning so easily and tells him he needs to fight her with everything he's got. The general just says it's because she's improved so much. Just then, a servant comes in to tell Princess Elda it's time for the royal council meeting. She mentions that the youngest prince is still too young to depart. As a result, she concluded that more time was necessary for preparations, but no one is allowed to question the king's decision on that. The princess just remarked that their very existence is for situations like this. They say their goodbyes, and as Princess Elda leaves, the general thinks to himself about the bitter fate of the royal family. One is sold off in marriage, and the other is a king's sacrifice. Later in the castle's dining hall, a priest speaks at length about how honored the kingdom feels to have one of its princes chosen for the quest. Now that the king's first grandchild has been born, tradition dictates that the ceremony to bless the king's gift, the Aire Ceremony, must begin. Princess Elda scoffs, correcting the priest that what he really means is the king's sacrifice. The priest, unfazed, explains that according to the goddess's church, a descendant of the royal family must be chosen as this gift. The royal chosen for the Aire Ceremony then has to pick an attendant to join them. The two of them are bound by a contract, dedicating their lives to finding the queen's last legacy. This quest, also known as the King's Gift, will take them all across the continent, with the duty of helping everyone they meet. That means they'll be doing everything from fighting criminals to subjugating demons. While the priest is talking, everyone at the table, except for the youngest prince, is just yapping away, completely ignoring him. But he continues. If the chosen one overcomes all the hardships and actually finds the treasure, they'll be crowned the next king. He finishes by asking for a volunteer from the direct descendants, his gaze settling on the youngest prince. Two of the brothers immediately speak up, saying it's already been decided who's going, so this whole meeting is just a waste of time. The youngest prince then apologizes to his older brothers, confirming that he's the one they're talking about who will be going on the journey. But our princess isn't having it. She interrupts, calling them nasty people for not being the least bit grateful after dumping this massive burden on their youngest brother. Offended, the two brothers take a jab back at her, hinting that she'll be sold off soon enough. But the eldest brother silences them, asking how they can say such horrible things so casually, as if they have nothing to fear. The two immediately get scared and start making excuses. As they're trembling before their older brother, the second prince turns to Princess Elda. He asks why she's even here, pointing out that she could have skipped this meeting like her other sisters. She tells him she has every right to attend. He then asks if she's relieved she was born a woman, because if she were a man, their father would have definitely chosen her for the quest. She looks him dead in the eye and says she's certain of it. From this tense family dinner, we're whisked away to a massive coliseum packed with people. Inside the arena, warriors are facing off against a giant lizard monster, and the crowd is going absolutely wild. The gladiators cautiously circle the beast. Up in the VIP section, the royals and nobles are watching. The king looks bored and orders the gladiators to just finish the match already. Forced into action, one of the gladiators leaps at the monster, plunging his spear deep into its head. He jumps back, landing in a superhero pose as the monster collapses. The audience erupts with excitement at the display of skill. In the stands, a little kid asks his father what the glowing thing floating in the air is. The father explains that it's a magic stone, a precious gem that contains spells cast by the court magicians. He tells his son that even though they can't see it, the stone is projecting a powerful shield, which is why they're all safe from the monster down in the arena. Meanwhile, in the Colosseum's halls, guards are escorting a prisoner to the arena. Halfway there, Princess Elda intercepts them. The prisoner looks at her and asks if she remembers her promise, calling her by her name Elda. He wants to reconfirm that if he survives, she will set him free, putting her honor and status on the line. He just reassures her that he'll bring her an easy victory, just like before. She tells him to remember that no one, including her, thinks he can win. After their exchange, he's led away to the arena. The king remarks that he's been eagerly waiting for this next match. An announcer, whose image is magically projected across the arena, begins to speak. He declares that today's match will decide the new king of gladiators. He introduces the challenger, Argathia's newly emerged divine magician, the man who has defeated countless foes by himself, Jirga Sylphiance. As Jirga enters, the crowd goes ballistic, screaming insults, calling him a dirty spy and an enemy of the kingdom. The announcer explains that although he's here as punishment for espionage, if he wins this final match, he'll be crowned the king of gladiators and pardoned of all his crimes. But first, he has to defeat the current champion. As soon as he's in the arena, Jirga starts scanning the audience. His eyes lock onto a lady standing in the crowd, and they share a quick, meaningful glance. Then the announcer introduces his opponent, the reigning king of gladiators, a man who rules the arena with exceptional skill, yet is a slave beneath them all. The incarnation of a gladiator, a skull-faced warrior, enters, dragging a heavy chain. It's Vera, the current champion. As the two opponents face off, Princess Elda's servant asks if she's sure about today's winner. Princess Elda just says that he will be the one to get her out of here. The servant asks why she chose to, but Princess Elda cuts her off, saying she is sick of being told her whole life that she'll be married off for convenience, sold away just like her mother was. The match begins. Vera slowly approaches Jirga, dragging his chains. Jirga notices Vera doesn't have a weapon and wonders if he's a martial artist, confused by the excessively long chain. Shrugging it off, Jirga starts casting a fire spell. Vera wraps the chain around his hands and starts spinning it. The chain is his weapon. Jirga, full of confidence, apologizes in advance for finishing the match quickly. He summons multiple fireballs and declares he'll be sending Vera to join his dead slave friends, then launches the attack. Vera hastily swings his chains, intercepting every single fireball before they can reach him. Jirga is stunned. He can't believe Vera figured out the trajectories of all the fireballs, and even if he did, hitting each one so precisely with a chain is just insane. While Jirga is dazed, Vera leaps towards him, attacking with his chains. At the last second, Jirga dodges to the side. As Vera recovers, Jirga casts another spell, launching a new set of fireballs just as Vera lands. But these are different. They explode on contact. Vera doesn't try to block them. Instead, he dodges them with incredible speed and launches a punch directly at Jirga's face. Jirga, however, is no slouch. He defends with his staff, but Vera's power is overwhelming. The force pushes Jirga back and shatters his staff completely. The crowd goes crazy in awe of the fight between these two powerful opponents. Princess Elda is watching intently, thinking to herself that the magician clearly didn't expect his staff to break. Now he'll have to concentrate even harder to cast his spells. But Jirga isn't discouraged. In fact, he seems thankful he's unharmed. He clasps his hands and begins to cast a new spell. Vera isn't just going to stand there and watch, though. He throws his chain high into the air, and as it reaches its peak, he yanks it down, bringing it crashing towards Jirga. Jirga dodges to the side, but Vera redirects the chain, smacking him hard. As Jirga was casting, the chain wraps around his waist and Vera pulls him in. Jirga is concerned. His magical shield is broken, but thankfully, at least half of it is still intact. Princess Elda had already noticed that the magician was casting a spell when they met earlier. It was invisible, but he's famous for his skilled use of a body shield spell. That's why the chains around him look unnatural. She's sure he's uninjured from the attack, but now he's tied up tight. What's he going to do? Jirga tries to unwind the chain, but seeing this, Vera rushes in, pulling the chain tighter. Jirga can't move. Seizing the opportunity, Vera lands a brutal knee strike straight to Jirga's head. But Jirga isn't finished. He grabs Vera and remarks that he looks like a magician himself, then smashes his own head into Vera's skull mask. He doesn't stop with one. He delivers a second headbutt, and this time it cracks Vera's mask. Sensing the danger, Vera uses Jirga's body as a springboard to jump away. When Vera lands, his skull mask crumbles to the ground, revealing his face. Jirga is shocked to see that Vera is just a kid, probably from the north. The servant asks if their heads are okay after those hard hits. Princess Elda explains that Vera had his helmet, and the magician used what was left of his barrier to protect his own head and turn it into a weapon. He's not bad. Vera stares at his broken mask, distracted for a moment. Jirga doesn't waste this chance. He begins to cast a spell, and the ground around him ignites, forming a protective firewall. The magician thinks to himself that he never thought he'd have to use this spell here. It's his most scorching fire magic. He tells Vera he'll be waiting for him inside the wall. The intense heat of the flames begins to melt the chains holding Jirga, freeing him. He uses this time to cast another shield on himself. Princess Elda notes that the flames melted the chains unusually fast. By severing the chains, he unintentionally warned Vera. If he hadn't, Vera might have run straight into the flames and burned to death. But then again, if the chain hadn't melted, Vera could have just yanked him out. Jirga is now completely surrounded by fire, with only 20% of his barrier left. He's low on magic power and has no other choice. The downside of this spell is that he can't see what's happening outside the wall, but he figures the chains are melted, so Vera can't break through the front. It's obvious Vera's only option is to attack from above. so Jirga prepares a volley of fireballs, aiming them upwards to catch Vera when he jumps. Outside the firewall, Vera assesses the situation. He looks around, gets an idea, and starts running. He unwraps his chain, leaps up onto the arena wall right in front of the audience, and then throws his chain, wrapping it securely around the giant magic stone floating overhead. After checking the knot, he starts running along the wall of the arena, using the chain to build momentum. Then he breaks the chain, launching himself into the air and soaring over the firewall. This move completely startles Jirga. He never expected an attack with such speed. His response is too slow, and his fireballs miss their target. Vera, using all the momentum he gathered, strikes Jirga's head, dissipating the firewall and knocking him out cold. When the dust settles, Vera stands victorious, with Jirga defeated under his boot. The king takes a sword from a guard, unsheathes it, and throws it to Vera, who catches it expertly. The audience signals for death, all giving a thumbs down. Jirga can't believe this is how he's going to die like a pig, his life turned into entertainment. He pleads to God, begging for a miracle. The final decision rests with the king. As he's about to give his verdict, the lady from the crowd from before calls out, pleading with his majesty. She introduces herself as Svalin, the daughter of Archduke Arthan of the Sashira kingdom. She apologizes for her interruption, but begs for a moment to speak. The king, confused but intrigued, allows it. She declares that although Jirga is a criminal, it would be a waste to let such a skilled magician die. She says his majesty must know that no one can use fire magic as effortlessly as Jirga does. She begs the king to allow her to take him as a magic instructor to their allied city where he can pay for his crimes. However, she adds, if the king disagrees, the Aire Ceremony is right in front of them. The king could command Jirga to devote his life to Argathia as the heir's subordinate. She pleads with him not to throw away such a talented magician. The king considers it as the people glare at the woman with discontent. Then the king gives a thumbs up, before suddenly, cruelly flipping it to a thumbs down. Vera accepts the king's verdict. The crowd screams in applause. Jirga pleads for his life, but Vera leans in and asks him for one favor, to pay respects to the friends he killed and to tell them that he misses them. Then Vera ends Jirga's life. The lady, Svalin, is devastated and faints. It's revealed that the king knew about her relationship with Jirga all along. Vera drops the sword and prays, "May he be reborn in a peaceful land." Princess Elda's servant comments that it all went just as Princess Elda expected. And it's in this moment that Princess Elda makes her decision. Vera will be her attendant. The atmosphere was absolutely electric. The king was in high spirits, and Vera, having just won his match, held his arm up high, glancing slightly toward the second prince. The second prince, however, was irritated by Vera's victory. He thought, was that famous magician not even a worthy opponent for him? The prince then scolded the guard behind him. "Can't that magician you brought even do this job properly?" he demanded. The guard was ashamed, not having expected the magician to be so weak. The prince warned him that if he failed just one more time, he would be the one in the arena. The guard swore he would search the depths of hell to find someone worthy. Vera entered the waiting room of the Colosseum, where his friends were waiting. Upon seeing him, they exclaimed that he had finally given his opponent what he deserved and that their departed friends would be content. Vera agreed, acknowledging that their friends could now finally rest in peace. They sealed the moment with a fist bump. Under the scorching sun, gladiators were sparring at a training center. Vera and his friends arrived at the center to a round of congratulations from everyone. Even the master was there, welcoming them and expressing how proud he was, admitting he had been anxiously awaiting their victories. Vera and his friends thanked the master for worrying about them. The master then announced that an extravagant meal had been prepared for them and told them to enjoy it. They thanked him again. Everyone was happy about the celebratory meal, which included a portion of the monster they had fought earlier. As they were all enjoying the feast, Vera stood up. His friends commented that it was a strange time to leave, as the area near the statue was so depressing before a meal, but Vera left anyway. He went to the statue of the goddess to pray for his friends who had struggled so much. The magician had been a powerful opponent. Vera had almost died a couple of times, but he was thinking about his friends the whole time, and that's why, even though it was difficult, he was able to win. He told them to rest easy, remembering how they had once dreamed of freedom together. He never knew it would turn out like this, but he was determined to live for their sake. He prayed that they might be born again in a peaceful land, then bid them a final farewell. He pulled out a broken piece of his mask and told Verdo that his mask was broken and he was sorry. Suddenly, one of his friends called out to Vera, telling him that the princess had arrived. The princess was waiting and the master was apologizing and asking for forgiveness. When Vera and his friends arrived, the master instructed them to greet the princess. Vera didn't disappoint. He swooped in and began groveling before the princess, bowing his head to her. Princess Elda stepped on his head and scolded him. "How dare you relax during the match?" she said. Vera begged for forgiveness, saying he had offended Princess Elda's feelings. She scolded him for daring to relax during the match, while Vera begged forgiveness, admitting that he had offended Princess Elda's feelings. She scoffed at the notion of feelings, mocking the idea that someone like him could ever offend hers. Vera expressed shame at how empty his own words sounded. The princess lifted her leg, ordering him to raise his head. He conveyed his thanks, but she dismissed it, telling him not to speak words he did not mean. She then pressed him with questions, asking if, when he finally bound the magician, he had predicted the dodge in the same direction as before. Vera admitted it and praised her sharp eyes. She continued, asking if he and his friends had something significant in the coming days. Vera confirmed that in 3 days they had a mock battle in the third prince's house. She assured him it would end well and told him to wait. After that, she departed. As the carriage left the training center, Vera began venting his frustration, cursing the princess for mocking him. His friend remarked that he always acted that way after meeting her, pretending to stay composed before her. Vera insisted it was necessary or things would become troublesome. He cursed her again, vowing revenge someday with his own hands. When asked if the princess knew their plan, he reassured them that only 4 of them knew. At that moment, his friend's expression shifted as he warned that the princess was returning. Convinced she had secretly come back, Vera fell to his knees, groveling for forgiveness. But when he opened his eyes, no one stood at the gate. His friend mocked his dramatic display, and Vera, furious, threatened to kill them. They calmed him down, reminding him that they meant well and that he should know better. Vera muttered that he hoped the Aire Ceremony would come quickly so he could finally leave the place. His friend hesitated, but Vera reassured him, insisting the plan was perfect and urging him to trust. Inside the carriage, a servant asked the princess what troubled her to wear such an expression. She confessed that whenever she saw Vera trying so hard, she could not help but find it amusing. The servant, bewildered, questioned why she had chosen him as her attendant but had not told him earlier. The princess replied that it would be more entertaining to reveal it dramatically. The servant asked why she would select a slave for such a difficult quest when she could have the likes of Griffith, Luffy, or even someone like Gandalf. The princess answered that no matter how she considered it, she could not imagine anyone worse than Vera, leaving the servant more confused than ever. The scene shifted to a flashback in the Colosseum. The princess and her brother, the second prince, entered together. He hesitated, thinking it too early for her to witness such brutality, but feared what would happen if their father and the teachers discovered this. The princess, however, was curious, eager to see the match that everyone had been speaking of. The fight began. She saw a young Vera facing an opponent dressed similarly to the one from his later match with Jirga. Vera struggled, tears in his eyes, but delivered a devastating attack. The crowd erupted in excitement, the princess among them, astonished. Yet as Vera landed the final blow, killing his opponent, he wept, pressing against the wound in the other chest. The audience cheered, but Vera was broken. Princess stood frozen. The second prince asked if it had been too brutal, but she held her heart silently. After the match, she and her brother went to the gladiator's quarters so she could see the boy up close. As the prince conversed with the master of the arena, the princess watched Vera train furiously against a dummy. Suddenly, she asked her brother if she could stand closer to him. Perplexed by her interest in a slave, he questioned her, but she assured him she would remain in sight and exchange only a few words. The master added that the slaves were chained, so there was little danger. Guards were assigned, and she approached. Vera pounded the dummy relentlessly until his breath gave out. His hands bloodied, he leaned against it, sobbing, calling out someone named Verado, lamenting his death and questioning the point of surviving alone. The princess approached, though the guard tried to stop Vera. She silenced him and insisted on continuing. She told Vera that she had enjoyed his match and admired his determination to train immediately afterward, but Vera remained silent. She pressed further, asking if he was mute. The guard lost patience, ready to draw his blade, but the princess restrained him. She called Vera a wretch, demanding he answer. Instead, Vera told her to shut up. His voice grew menacing as he repeated it, ordering her to leave. The princess froze, stunned by his defiance. She asked him if he knew who she was. The guard slapped him with his unsheathed sword, asking how he dared to show disrespect to the princess. The princess warned the guard, reminding him that she had told him to stay out of it. The guard apologized. Vera, upon realizing she was someone of high status, asked what her business was with him, asking if she wanted to see her livestock up close. The angered guard drew his sword, telling Vera that if he wanted to die that much, he would grant his wish. The princess glared at the guard with a stern look, silencing him. However, Vera did not stop and taunted her that it would have been nice to have him killed. He yelled for them to kill him, expressing he no longer wanted to live in a place where someone like her reigned. His outburst startled her, but out of nowhere her brother told Vera that he would have his wish. He instructed the guard to kill Vera, reasoning that someone who dared to treat his sister in such a manner had no right to live. Vera was pinned down by guards in front of the second prince and the princess. The slave master, looking worried, told the second prince that Vera's heart was still anxious after the day's big match. He begged the second prince for benevolence for the new king of gladiators. The prince was not swayed, stating he did not care about the reasons of a slave. The princess chimed in, asking if it was necessary to have him killed since he was the country's king of gladiators. The second prince was furious that a slave would insult royalty, noting that even a commoner would be executed for such an act. He concluded it would be best to kill him swiftly with a sharp sword, which would be the most benevolence that could be bestowed upon him. The princess told him that Vera did not know she was the princess, but the prince replied that not knowing was a sin. At that moment, she took her brother's hand and begged him to show mercy. Seeing her determination, he relented, expressing that his sister's heart was too kind. He agreed to pardon the insignificant slave, adding that Vera would probably kill himself one day anyway. Vera was not remorseful at all. He told the prince not to mess with him, accusing the prince of being dishonest and saying he could not even bring himself to laugh. He stated that the royalty feasted over a massacre every week and that the kindness coming from the prince's mouth was dirty and disgusting. The master panicked and the prince's expression darkened. He ordered the guards to take off Vera's head. One of the guards told Vera not to move, warning that if he did, they would have to slash him a couple of times. Vera accepted the beheading, muttering for Virgo to wait for him as he would come to his side soon. Before he was beheaded, the princess stopped the execution, which frustrated her brother. Vera shouted for the royals to hurry up and kill him. The second prince asked the princess if she was asking him to show mercy even after what Vera had said. The princess ordered a guard to shut Vera's filthy mouth. The guard grabbed Vera and silenced him. The princess then asked her brother if he was still thinking of killing the slave. She argued that if he were doing it for her, it could be said she killed him too, and she would never forget it, carrying the memory for a long time, which might lead her to despise him. The second prince, not wanting that, reluctantly asked if she liked the slave. She answered that there was no way she did. In that case, he agreed to pardon Vera per her request, but insisted that he still needed to see Vera treated how a slave should be. Vera, restrained, was being hit on the back and disciplined by the guards. The second prince and the princess were sitting with a front row seat to the punishment. Vera was unhinged, taking it all in silence and looking at the royalty with a death glare. The second prince stopped the hitting. He told Vera he would grant him a chance for his sister and instructed him to repeat the phrase, "This lowly, humble servant and dog is begging for forgiveness." Vera told him that he couldn't hear well and asked if he could say it again. The prince, thinking Vera's ears were affected from the punishment, repeated the phrase, "This lowly, humble servant and dog is begging for forgiveness." Vera laughed and told the prince that he would forgive him as if Vera was the one forgiving. Vera was still trying to provoke him. The princess thought that if things continued like this, she would no longer be able to fix the situation. Vera continued to taunt the second prince, daring him to act and asking if he had lost the guts to do so. The guard continued to hit him. The second prince calmly thought that might be the case. He did not have the guts to be despised by his little sister. However, he wanted to show Vera that there was something more agonizing and scarier than this kind of pain in the world. He told Vera to look forward to it while signaling the master to come closer. Vera was bewildered about what the second prince was going to do. Vera was caught off guard as other slaves, including his friends, were brought out and forced to kneel in front of them. Vera stayed silent. The second prince signaled the guards, who struck an old slave. Vera was in utter disbelief that the other was being punished for what he did. The second prince remarked that the slave's skin only got ripped and it wasn't life-threatening, but that was the extent of his mercy. A guard loomed over Vera's friend. The second prince then ordered the guard to kill the friend, so that Vera should remember this was all because of what he did. His friend, who seemed to be the same age, wet himself and pleaded for Vera. The princess exclaimed, asking her brother if he thought Vera would apologize if he did this, calling it a massacre. Then Vera said he begged for their forgiveness. The princess was surprised. Vera slammed his head against the ground and said that this lowly, humble slave and dog was begging for forgiveness. The prince asked the princess to hold his wine glass. She obliged. He told her to spill it on the ground. She did not know what he was planning but did as asked. The prince then spoke, saying that the princess wanted to take pity on the poor dog and give him something to drink, and that of course the dog would be thankful and drink it. Vera, seeing the row of slaves and his friends, began to crawl to the spilled wine and drink it from the ground. The second prince showed this to the princess and told her to remember it, explaining this is how to treat something lower than a dog. He asked if it was fun to see people submitting to her, then thought that perhaps this was too much for her at her age. The princess smirked and began to smile creepily. Back at the present time, the youngest prince was sparring with a guard. The princess interrupted his spar, commenting on his hard work. The guard was dismissed. The princess asked why he was working so hard when he had an attendant. The prince replied that he would soon be going and needed to know how to protect himself. She told him that he worried too much and that nothing was set in stone yet. The youngest prince sighed, nodding that the next day he would not be a prince anymore, which was sad. The princess hugged him and told him not to worry, as no one knew what would happen in the end. The prince looked forward to seeing their third brother raise his hand. The princess did not think that would ever happen, suggesting the probability of their first brother raising his hand was higher. The prince chuckled and agreed, but said there would be no one willing to go instead of him. He did not want to go or be separated from his sister. The princess looked intensely at him and told him it was fated to be one of them. She had no choice but to be sold to another country, and she would still need to go regardless. The youngest hoped for a miracle. The princess sighed and came up with a solution. She told him to find the treasure and then they would meet again. She reached out her hand with her pinky ready. The youngest teared up and they made a pinky promise. On the night of the Aire Ceremony, the temple was filled with people and priests. The ceremony finally started to decide who would go on the journey. They hoped for blessings upon their path. The royal family, including the two previously absent princesses, gathered in front of the priest. One princess was bored and wanted to go back to her room, while the other was curious why a certain man was standing there and getting in the way. The priest explained that one of them with noble blood would swear an oath upon the goddess, approved by the king chosen by the goddess's church. They were to go up to the platform, swear the oath while holding up a hand, and then receive a sword and shield. After that, the pledge would be unalterable. The chosen person could not be replaced. If no one held out their hand, the king would choose one directly. The priest encouraged them to accept the goddess's quest before that happened. The princes encouraged the youngest, praising him and acting suspiciously. They were lined up in order, and the ceremony continued. Back at the Gladiator training center, Vera and his friends commented that security was lax because everyone had gone to the temple for the national event. They had tied up all the guards, instructors, and the master without any injuries. They contemplated what to do with the captives and concluded that what they had done was enough. Vera thought they did not have much time, so they decided to go. Everyone agreed. After destroying a wall, they revealed a tunnel and proceeded through it, which they had been digging for 2 years. They emerged into the city sewage system and traveled along the pathway. Seeing a light at the far end, they pounded on the sewer bars until they broke them off. They were free. As they were leaving the sewer, an arrow flew toward them and struck one of them. Vera looked up and saw an army lying in wait, bearing the symbol of the first prince's soldiers. He realized that was why it had been too easy. Back at the Aire Ceremony, the princess raised her hand to volunteer before the youngest could. Her decision left them dumbfounded, unable to process what had just happened. Her third brother asked what she was doing, and her second brother called her name loudly. He stood there, annoyed, frustrated, and completely stunned. The first brother grabbed his shoulder, telling him it could not be changed anymore, giving him a warning look to stop making a commotion. The second brother calmed down. The people in attendance were even more confused. Her youngest brother was in tears. The princes gave the priest a stern look. The priest, regaining his composure, announced the decision. The heir shall be Her Royal Highness Elda de Springers. The people confirmed it was real and not a little girl's joke, worried that such a young girl was about to embark on a challenging journey. Did they want to protect the youngest prince? The ceremony continued. The priest presented the shield and the sword to Elda. She took them and examined them closely, then demonstrated her skill with the sword, performing graceful and precise moves. The people were astounded by her skill. She twirled the sword and caught it, saying she already liked it. Raising her sword high, the people clapped for the demonstration and cheered aloud, calling her name. The king looked clearly frustrated, glaring in disgust. The youngest brother approached and asked why she did it for him. She smiled and told him it was not just for him, as she had said before. The priest escorted the princess as they left. The youngest called out to his sister. The second brother suddenly realized something, making a dash out of the temple. Later that night, the king raged, knocking over a wine glass, frustrated by the chaos caused by the princess. While elsewhere, the princes were in a room, drinking and frustrated by Princess Elda, concluding she would regret everything in a day. They asked the youngest if he already knew. How dare they trick them? He expressed he had no idea about it. After hearing him out, they congratulated him for being able to continue living a good life in the kingdom and making a turnabout, telling him to get along well and enjoy life. It would be more fun than being the heir. The second prince hurriedly commanded his personal guard to eliminate the filthy slave at any cost. The servant stood bewildered, wondering why the prince was so obsessed with that one slave. The second prince insisted that the guard ensure the task was carried out, and the guard assured him that the slave's head would be brought immediately. The prince added that he had already sent some men to the training center, instructing that their number be kept to a minimum. Just as the guard was about to depart, a soldier reported that the slave, Vera, had already been detained by the first prince's soldiers. At the prison, the group were resting, bickering among themselves. They wondered where it had all gone wrong. How did they end up here? Was it coincidence or betrayal? Vera thought briefly, but seeing his friends, he realized they would not betray him. They had just been unlucky. They worried about what was going to happen to them. They might be made to compete against each other until one remained. Vera thought he would like to avoid that. The princess approached their cell and asked what was happening. Immediately, all of them began to beg desperately for her to save them. She, however, exclaimed that once they were captured like this, their fate could only be death. A small smirk played on her lips, but Vera noticed it. She continued, expressing what a pity it was that they had been captured, and even worse, by the merciless first brother. Vera guessed that she knew something, but the question lingered. How did she know? Mole began to cry, pleading with the princess not to abandon the poor slaves, insisting that if given a chance, they would do anything for her. The princess replied that it was fine for now, but if their plight reached her father's attention, only one of them might survive. She looked at Vera, considering whether he who cared deeply for his friends would choose to sacrifice himself. Of course he would not. For him, this was an opportunity to finish off his friends and survive. All eyes turned to him, worry etched on their faces, and Vera clamped his mouth shut. The princess sighed. She explained that she wanted to give them a chance, one without bloodshed, since they were all somewhat special to her. They were surprised by the sudden proposal and looked to one another for confirmation. When no one responded, she asked if they truly did not need mercy. They all sank to their knees, vowing never to forget what the princess had done for them. Yet she added that there was one condition. One condition, they asked, looking up at her. So she was saying, the princess was preparing to embark on a journey as the chosen heir and had chosen Vera to accompany her as her attendant. Vera asked how long the journey would last, and she explained that she had told him everything. The journey would continue until they found the queen's treasure. When he inquired about the treasure's location, she admitted she didn't know exactly, only that it was somewhere, and that none of the previous heirs had ever found it. The journey, she explained, would only end once the treasure was discovered, which could very well take an eternity, until both of them died. Vera grew somber and muttered the word eternity. Confused, she asked him to clarify, but he only spoke softly, and finally, through tears, he admitted that he did not want to go on the journey with her. Even his friends were taken aback. He turned to them, pleading silently that they should just fight. Going on a journey with Princess Elda was worse than facing death peacefully in the arena. His friends were dumbfounded, unable to respond. The princess's fury surged, sharp and overwhelming, as if a beast had descended upon them. Mole quickly struck Vera in frustration, demanding if he had lost his mind, though everyone else shouted for him to be quiet, worried that Vera might endanger them all. Yet Vera persisted, insisting that a journey alone with the princess was unbearable and that dying would be preferable. The princess briefly considered ending them, but Mole, more practical, pinched Vera's cheek and whispered a plan: endure the journey for a few days, then escape once she fell asleep. Vera, dazed, began to drift off. The princess was bound and restrained, her eyes wet with tears as she begged desperately for mercy. Vera stood before her, his fists clenched, forcing her to remember everything she had ever done to him. The rage within him burned so fiercely that he could hardly contain the urge to kill her on the spot. Instead, he gathered his belongings, declaring that he would take everything with him. Her pleas grew louder, but he dismissed them coldly, insisting that none of it mattered to him anymore. To him, it was time for her to pay her debts. As he gripped a bat and prepared it in his hands, it was revealed that it was only in his mind, imagining himself delivering punishment to the helpless princess. When Vera's fantasy faded, he turned toward the princess with a sly expression. She bristled with offense at the audacity of his gaze, declaring that if he did not wish to accompany her, then only one of them should be left alive. The others immediately called out to Vera in alarm, but he was confused. Did she truly not realize? Was it not obvious that his intent had always been to escape during the journey? Yet even he was no longer certain. He could not allow his friends to die. This was the only way for them all to survive. Vera announced his acceptance of her condition, but added one of his own. She turned sharply, insulted that he dared to bargain, but he raised his voice, declaring, if she allowed his friends to go free, he swore he would accompany her on her quest. Until then, he would not move, because leaving them behind meant they would be forced to fight one another regardless. If she truly wished to bring him, then she might as well save all of them. Otherwise, he would remain and protect his companions. Though reckless, his gamble was not without sense. Even in his own eyes, it was clear what she wanted, and he suspected she would not be able to refuse. After a long pause, the princess accepted. She promised to find a way to secure freedom for the others, but warned there would be no more conditions. Overjoyed, his friends bowed deeply, vowing never to forget her kindness. When she departed, they leapt upon Vera in excitement, celebrating the deal that had spared them. Vera, however, held his own thoughts. Even if he felt a reluctant gratitude toward her, he planned to follow her only for a time before slipping away. To hand over his freedom so easily would be wasteful. Yet, as the princess glanced back at him, she thought to herself how endearing he looked. Did he not realize how loud the voice in his head was, betraying every hidden thought? In the heart of the city, an adventurer stepped into a crowded tavern. The place was alive with noise and motion, mercenaries huddled over maps, others trading weapons, a few brawling in the corner. The adventurer moved straight to the bar and exchanged a few words with the bartender. A subtle code passed between them. With a nod, the bartender led him toward the back room. Inside, the air was heavier, filled with people he had never met before. As he entered and greeted the room, a woman was already waiting for him. She scolded him sharply, berating his constant tardiness before gesturing for him to join the gathering. Introducing him to the others, she revealed that he was a hunter, an expensive one at that. Then she began to explain. Money, she promised, would no longer be an issue for any of them. She asked if they had heard of the upcoming Aire Ceremony. This time, it was the princess herself who would be sent on the journey, accompanied only by her chosen attendant. The pair would be adventurers, weaving their way across the world, and naturally they would be carrying valuable belongings and rare items. Her voice lowered with a sharp edge. When the princess and her companion took their first steps beyond the safety of the palace, they would taste the vast, unforgiving world for the very first time. And when that moment came, it would be these adventurers who stripped them bare, robbing them of their weapons, their possessions, and their illusions. After all, was it not the duty of those hardened by the road to give such sheltered souls their first bitter taste of reality? The hunter raised a question, asking what the Aire Ceremony actually was. The leader, unwilling to repeat herself, waved him off, and instead the Minotaur stepped in to explain. According to him, one chosen heir was required to abandon everything and embark on a journey to seek a treasure that no one had ever managed to find. The concept was strange, even absurd, yet it was the foundation of the ritual. Four Eyes picked up the explanation, answering when the Minotaur asked where exactly the ceremony came from. He described how whenever a direct descendant of the royal bloodline was chosen as heir, the goddess church across the continent would simultaneously elect an emperor to rule the kingdom for the next 20 years. In a country where the church served as the state religion, that meant laws could be justified through divine authority. Diplomacy itself was wrapped in ritual, all of it tied to the Aire Ceremony. The truth, Four Eyes explained, was darker. Royal descendants existed for no other purpose than to be offered as heirs, and the nation's entire identity revolved around producing and sacrificing them. In some ways, the country itself stood second to the queen's duty of creating heirs. The Minotaur narrowed his eyes, confused by how Four Eyes knew so much. With little hesitation, Four Eyes revealed that he was from this very country, this very city, in fact. That was why the leader had brought him along. If their plan was to succeed, they would need someone with his knowledge. The elf interrupted, asking about the commission fee. If it turned out to be as trivial as the last time, she declared she would rather return to her forest. The Minotaur also pressed for the amount. This time, the leader revealed the figure, 400 million. Their task was to deliver a sword and shield to the client. Though the elf found the reward underwhelming, she conceded that, considering the target, it was an appropriate sum for robbing a pair of naive adventurers. The Minotaur immediately began calculating how much each of them would earn, but the leader silenced him with a grin. She revealed that the 400 million was not the total, it was the share for each of them. Every member would receive 400 million individually, while she herself would claim 500. In total, the commission amounted to an astonishing 2.5 billion. The room erupted with excitement at the mention of 2.5 billion. It was a staggering amount, a deal none of them could ignore. Even if the heir's shield and sword weren't of the finest quality, they were still treasures. The leader reassured them that the information came from a trusted source. Yet the elf pressed further, asking who would ever invest such an enormous sum. The hunter shared the same doubts. The leader explained that the client was only a retainer. They might never know who stood behind that retainer, but they could be certain the payment would arrive. And not only that, since this was a royal departure, the heir and attendant would surely carry valuable items with them. If they thought about it in those terms, the rewards could far exceed 2.5 billion. Still, the leader reminded them of an old rule: the higher the pay, the more dangerous the task. She had observed enough to know that while the princess and her new attendant might seem like naive beginners, there would be obstacles. The first obstacle would be competition. Countless other adventurers were eager for a share of the same prize. On the day the princess was released from the castle, a simulation would take place, meaning the royal guard would be drawn thin. That day would also mark the heir's first trial. No one would intervene to protect her, which gave them a clear advantage. But if she and her attendant crossed paths with other bandits, they might not survive at all. The second obstacle lay in unpredictability. The heir's movement range would be wide and unrestricted, making it difficult to track which city or direction she might head toward. The Minotaur suggested waiting at the starting point and launching a surprise attack, but the elf dismissed the idea. Such attempts had been made before, and the royal party was always wary at the beginning. The leader agreed. It was unknown how well they might fend off early ambushes, but what truly mattered was that the goddess church would send disguised adventurers to accompany the heir. Even the smallest mistake could cause the entire mission to collapse. Still, they needn't worry too much. Teacher Du was already preparing countermeasures for both the first and second obstacles. When asked directly, the teacher assured them he would fulfill his duty with absolute focus. The third obstacle was political. Everyone had expected Prince Elec to be chosen as heir, but instead Princess Elda had been selected. Neither of the youngest royals were known for combat ability, especially the princess. Inquiries into her background revealed nothing beyond her reputation for righteousness and intelligence, along with trivial notes such as her fondness for reading. She was, in short, harmless. But her attendant was another matter. Originally, the knight assigned as attendant was unimpressive, but this time the princess had chosen a slave, one who happened to be the reigning king of gladiators. The hunter scoffed, questioning whether such a title mattered. A slave was still a slave, and surely he could not surpass his station. The leader firmly disagreed. This so-called slave had killed Jurga, a magician powerful enough to fight entire battles alone. The room fell silent, stunned. They asked if she truly meant that Jurga, the Hellfire Defender, the most famous newcomer whose reputation had been spreading across the continent. The leader confirmed it. His life had ended in vain, cut down by the slave they now had to deal with. Nevertheless, fortune was on their side. The leader herself had witnessed the gladiators' battles after arriving early in the city. She had spent time at the arenas, both to rest and to earn money, and in doing so, she had studied his fighting style. Thanks to that, they now had the means to prepare countermeasures. There was no need to panic. Still, the hunter voiced his unease. What would happen if the princess were killed? If her attendant was strong enough to slay Jurga, underestimating him could prove fatal. The leader shook her head. The client had been clear. The princess must not be harmed. That, in fact, was her greatest concern. If royalty were to be gravely injured or killed during the Aire Ceremony, the kingdom would not stay silent, even if she was considered expendable. and Aire was still royalty. The risks would be catastrophic. Her attendant, however, was another matter. He was merely a slave. Should he cause trouble, they could kill him without hesitation. No one would shed tears over the death of a slave. If he proved difficult to handle, the decision was simple: kill him. No one would care. After all, he was only a slave, and replacing him would be easy for the princess. At the temple, Vera and Princess Elda met eyes. She asked him if he had enjoyed what he had learned over the past week. Vera admitted that he had. It was a rare experience, learning something beyond combat. He thought it had worked out perfectly. Even though he still planned to go on a journey with his friends, thanks to her, he had learned valuable lessons about survival. The priest then announced that this was the final ritual. He produced a piece of paper, explaining that the two of them would depart in a few hours once it was complete. Vera, puzzled, asked about the ritual. The priest showed him a contract, marked with a handprint, asking if it was his. Vera recalled how the princess had provided the funds to secure his friend's freedom and had asked him to stamp his hand on the contract. Vera admitted he was illiterate and could not understand the contract's words. The princess reassured him that it was nothing important, merely recording that she had paid for his friend's freedom, and as repayment he would accompany her on the journey to find the treasure of the late queen. The agreement also confirmed that he would always accompany and follow her. Vera considered this for a moment, then signed it, deciding to comply for now, planning to escape later. The princess smirked, pleased with how things had unfolded. She instructed him to educate himself on being her attendant and said she would see him in a week. Vera felt a twinge of unease watching her laugh. It made him want to strike her. When the priest asked if Vera acknowledged the contract's content, he glanced at the princess and confirmed that he did. He agreed to attend her while searching for the late queen's trail and the goddess's treasure, understanding the responsibilities and consequences of the journey. The priest began to recite the contract as part of the ritual, but the princess interrupted, complaining about his chatter. Vera thought she was insufferable, marveling at how she always interrupted, yet he confirmed he had heard all her explanations. Leaning closer, Vera warned the priest not to offend her, acknowledging her difficult personality. The priest agreed and announced they should prepare for the magic contract. Vera was confused. He had no idea what a magic contract entailed. The ritual began. The priest cast a spell and a blue orb of magic gathered above them. Once complete, it descended between them. Vera observed it closely. It did not seem offensive. The orb launched 2 rays, one for each of them, linking their hearts. He examined his body but felt no pain and asked the princess what had happened. She asked the priest if it had been successful. He confirmed it had been without failure. The princess clasped her hand, testing the magic, and then closed her eyes. The priest grew distressed, pleading with her to stop, but she did not. On the contrary, she seemed to enjoy it. Vera suddenly fell to the ground, racked with immense pain, screaming in agony. The priest pleaded with the princess to stop, his voice firm with urgency. Reluctantly, the princess ended the spell and the priest explained what had happened. Vera had been bound with restraint magic, while Lady Elda had been subjected to disciplinary magic. He handed the princess a paper listing the actions she must avoid. Clearly annoyed, she took the list, then approached Vera, who was still reeling from the pain. Before he could recover, the princess stepped on his head, pressing down lightly, her curiosity sharp. She wondered aloud how it felt, shackled to her so completely. Vera looked up at her, his eyes drained of hope, the weight of his new reality pressing on him. That night, the princess stood on a balcony, gazing over the city, deep in thought. She asked if he had forgotten that the chosen heir must not be approached by anyone from their immediate family. The first prince replied that he had simply come to pray for his sister to the goddess. She assumed that sister must not be her. He wanted to question whether she truly believed she could survive such a harsh journey, but the princess thought it no tougher than being sold off elsewhere. Had the first prince known it would turn out like this, he would never have lent her soldiers to teach her combat. He seemed to regret it. The first prince asked why she refused to let things take their natural course. Even though the young partner chosen for her was well-behaved, clear-minded, and utterly loyal, his country had never once defied its king's orders. Ultimately, he would fall under her control and she could rule as planned. The first prince reminded her that he and her father had arranged the best possible environment for her, a life that balanced duty, privilege, and happiness among good people. Why then choose a difficult path? The princess replied with quiet conviction. Those things, she said, were nothing more than petty decorations. To follow their plan would be to control a country while exploiting its people, sowing misfortune. She would no longer follow their guidance. She would live according to her own design so as not to repeat her mother's mistakes. The first prince countered that their decisions were born of love and concern for her. The princess called him out, dismissing it as empty words. Love, she argued, could not be measured through such control. Uncertain, the first prince fell silent, ultimately accepting Princess Elda's choice. The princess left him alone, resolute in her decision. In the dead of night, the Colosseum walls loomed over the adventurers as they gathered around a crackling fire. Their final checks were a silent ritual, each action deliberate in preparation for the coming storm. The leader elaborated on the slave attendant's weaponry, explaining that he wielded a chain manipulated with a magic stone, allowing for precise control. The adventurers were warned to avoid taking direct hits, as the chain was strong enough to shatter a magic stone. The attendant was skilled in both long and short-range combat, exceptionally fast and seemingly capable of extraordinary feats. The leader suspected that the chains had been enchanted beforehand, granting them abilities to tie, stretch, pull, and execute other complex maneuvers. They were compared to a well-trained snake, requiring caution from anyone who faced them. The elf remained skeptical, convinced that a slave could not be a formidable opponent, dismissing the warnings as exaggeration. The leader disagreed, having witnessed the attendant's abilities firsthand. The Minotaur also initially considered the threat negligible, confident in his own strength. Nasara, however, commanded discipline, assigning Belmano to track and observe the slave at all times, particularly when the princess was present. Belmano accepted the order enthusiastically. The elf was tasked with mid-range support, but all were reminded to avoid causing serious harm to the princess. The leader further instructed that Four Eyes, Chera, was to remain in a safe position, avoiding combat while standing ready to assist if others fell. Teacher Du, Nana, and Belmano were designated as on-standby support, prepared to intervene if needed. Golden's role was critical, as the discharge of his weapon could alert the city. He was to prepare for enemies approaching from close range, and to be ready to shoot the slave only if a comrade's life was in immediate danger. The team was instructed to act decisively within 3 minutes of hearing the gunshot, either abandon the mission or commit fully to its completion. The mission would be considered accomplished once the princess's belongings were secured, with the slave attendant neutralized if still alive, and the team arriving safely at the predetermined location. Golden and Nana agreed with the plan, though Nana questioned how they could predict the princess and her attendant's movements. Nasara had anticipated this concern and asked Teacher Du to demonstrate. Teacher Du sprinkled a dust over the fire, transforming the flames green, and began a ritual chant. The elf questioned the complexity of the ritual, but it was necessary to channel the magic. Teacher Du, possessing a rare form of future sight, could observe the target's path and intentions. As the ritual progressed, Teacher Du's vision revealed the princess and her attendant moving cautiously through the city, avoiding combat. They approached a statue of a female warrior holding a spear in one hand and a sword in the other. Chero identified it on a map as the Southeast Plaza, a monument commemorating the Queen's achievement in reunifying the South. Before departing, Golden sought confirmation of their success with future sight. Teacher Du corrected him, reminding that his ability allowed him only to glimpse the future of his target, not of his comrades. From the temple, the deep toll of a bell echoed, the signal of the princess's departure with her attendant. At the same time, a priest instructed the decoys. The first test, escaping from the Holy Land, would begin at the sound of that bell. The decoys had been told they were bait, but the truth was harsher than they imagined. Countless bandits crowded the outskirts. Now that Princess Elda had been declared heir instead of the prince, desperation had multiplied. Some bandits hungered for treasure, but many more sought to capture her alive and sell her as a slave for a fortune. The rule was simple. If the baits could hold out for half an hour, the temple would pay them the remainder of their reward. The decoys dispersed into the shadows, the priest giving them a final blessing. From another passage, Princess Elda and Vera emerged and slipped away. As they ran, they could hear bandits shouting, rallying to corner the decoys. When the pursuers finally reached their supposed prize, they realized the figures did not perfectly resemble the princess. The bandits, greater in number than anticipated, withdrew to search for the real target while the decoys fought desperately to hold them back. Meanwhile, Vera's thoughts turned dark. He remembered the pain of the spell from before. It was not about endurance. Once the curse activated, even lifting a finger was impossible. He reasoned the spell must have required 2 key elements, movement and contact. If he waited for her to make a mistake, he could exploit it. He imagined striking when she grew careless, knocking her unconscious, binding her hands, and forcing her to undo the spell under threat. His mind conjured grim methods, gagging her, torturing her in isolation, and if all else failed, killing her outright. Just as those thoughts formed, Princess Elda halted. She told him the back of her head was stinging. Somehow, she felt Vera was plotting to betray her. Vera quickly refuted her suspicion, claiming he had pledged his loyalty, that he carried a debt he could never repay. Even without the contract, he insisted, he had resolved to follow her to the end. But inside, he wavered. His plan almost felt too perfect. Should he finish her now? If she were dead, who would care about the spell? Elda turned to him and spoke with a calm, chilling certainty. She offered him a gift of knowledge. If the owner of a magic contract dies, the contractee also dies. The revelation struck him like a hammer. Vera's face paled, fear creeping into his eyes as he realized that her death would mean his own. Before the weight of the moment could settle, a bandit's shout pierced the air. He had spotted them. In an instant, dozens of armed men swarmed, surrounding the pair. Vera tightened his grip, his body sliding into a battle stance. With no choice left, he braced himself and launched into the fight. Prior to the final ritual, Vera had bid farewell to his friends. It was the moment they had long awaited. He apologized, regretful that he could not go with them. They thanked him, promised to meet at the agreed location, and parted ways. Back in the present, Vera stood amidst the aftermath of battle. The bandits lay bloodied on the ground, scattered at his feet. His thoughts drifted to his friends and the uncertain path ahead. Princess Elda watched him intently, the faintest smirk tugging at her lips. As they continued running, Vera's mind spun in turmoil. No matter how hard he tried, he could not find a solution. Even if he bound her hands and feet, if there was no way to lift the spell, he could not leave her side. If she died, he died as well. Did he truly have to protect this woman until his final breath? Was there really no other path? Lost in thought, he was startled when Princess Elda shouted at him. Enemies were closing in. The surviving bandits rallied, calling for reinforcements. She cast him a sharp look and asked if he was already tiring, if perhaps she should step in. Jolted back to reality, Vera surged forward. He barked at her to stay back, promising he would handle everything. With his chains, he smashed through the bandits one after another, sending them sprawling. He vaulted off one of them, descending with crushing force onto another. But as he landed, an arrow whistled through the air. Vera reacted instantly, whipping his chains to deflect the shot before striking back at the archer. Yet the attack had only been a ruse. From a nearby rooftop, two figures sprang forth, their blades glinting in the light as they descended upon Princess Elda. Vera's eyes widened. They were too far, he would not reach her in time. For a brief moment, his life flashed before him. But the princess did not flinch. Calmly, she reached behind her, drawing a sword and shield with swift precision. Steel rang as she parried the first strike, countering with a sharp slash that cut her assailant down. Vera froze in disbelief. The second attacker lunged, swinging his blade in a downward arc. Elda sidestepped with practiced ease, ramming her shield into his face with brutal force. He crumpled instantly. Vera hurried to her side, utterly stunned. She stood poised, her blade still in hand, breathing steady. He could not believe what he had just witnessed. Princess Elda knew how to fight. She herself seemed almost surprised, the sensation of cutting through her enemies still foreign. For a moment, her eyes softened, and she silently thanked the general who had prepared her for this day. Before the departure for the air quest, Princess Elda sparred with the general one final time. Their blades clashed in rhythm until at last, the general lowered his weapon. He told her that the training she had received should be enough. On the battlefield, she might encounter thugs who laughed at her, but if she carried herself with confidence, she would not falter. If, however, she cowered in fear, her life would surely be forfeit. Elda replied lightly that there was no need to worry. After all, Vera would be by her side. The general frowned at her words, calling them dangerous. When true danger came, he warned there might be no one beside her. Vera might fall or be too far away, and in that moment she would have only herself to rely upon. He reminded her, as he always did, that in the most desperate situations she would stand alone. Elda listened in silence before bowing her head in gratitude. Since her childhood, she had begged him to teach her, and he had accepted, guiding her with sincerity and patience. For that, she was profoundly thankful. Seeing the princess bowing with such earnestness brought tears to the general's eyes. He lowered his sword and began to weep openly. After a moment, he composed himself and announced he had a gift for her. To her shock, he began removing his clothes. Elda's eyes sharpened, her glare carrying the weight of a dragon's wrath. She asked if he had lost his mind. The general hastily explained. He wanted her to cut him. At her bewildered expression, he clarified that it was no joke. The first time a person cut through another's flesh, the sensation could be unsettling, even dangerous, if experienced in the chaos of battle. If she was unprepared, hesitation or panic could place her in grave peril. Since he could not order a prisoner or slave to be used for such training, there was no choice but to use his own body. He assured her there was a healer nearby to mend the wound, and besides, he had removed his uniform to avoid ruining its expensive fabric. Then, bracing himself, he told her to strike. Elda, unbothered, simply instructed him to turn around so that she could cut his back instead. The general froze, his face drained of color as the gravity of his own words sank in. He had assumed she would refuse outright, or at the very least suggest a compromise, perhaps with an animal. Instead, her calm insistence left him trapped. He regretted his earlier confidence, wishing he had arranged for a cow to be used. Still, there was no turning back. His pride and word bound him. Swallowing his fear, he asked only that she strike slowly. But before he could finish his request, her blade flashed. The strike landed with lightning speed. The general collapsed, rolling on the ground in agony, shouting for the healer. As the wound was being healed, he asked her what she had felt. Was she worried for him? Elda's hands trembled as she admitted the sensation had shaken her. The general nodded, telling her that in time, such nerves would fade and the act would bring no feeling at all. Many lives, he reminded her, would depend upon the strength of her hands. She must always carry the responsibility of her sword and wield it not for cruelty, but for the defense of what was right. The princess and Vera kept running. Vera glanced at her, still stunned by the skill she had displayed. He asked when she had first learned to wield a sword. She replied that it was the day after she had first met him. When they reached the South Plaza, they saw the adventurers gathered ahead. Belmano shouted at them, saying they were late and had kept everyone waiting. Princess Elda frowned. Waiting for us, something felt wrong. Without hesitation, Belmano charged forward to take the vanguard position. The leader called out, warning him to be cautious. But as a massive minotaur surged toward them, Vera accelerated, intercepting the creature before Belmano could. The two clashed, Vera and Belmano striking at the same moment. Yet only Vera's blow found its mark, while Belmano's attack missed entirely. The hammer blow of Vera's punch was so powerful that Belmano saw constellations, his face becoming a canvas of fleeting agony. Vera gave him no chance to recover, leaping over him and delivering a devastating kick that kept him down, unable to stand for some time. Turning his focus to the others, Vera quickly assessed the battlefield. One archer positioned on the wall, 3 others rushing forward. The archer could release more than 2 arrows at once. Among the runners, one carried both an axe and a dagger that could easily be thrown. Another, a bespectacled man, moved clumsily and did not seem like a capable fighter. A woman at the front bore no weapons, yet her muscular frame and fluid movements revealed her as a skilled combatant. The elf Nana suddenly leapt from the wall, losing a volley of arrows toward Vera. He evaded them with the smallest movements of his head, recognizing that her initial assault was a feint. Her true intention was to close the distance and fire at close range. She succeeded in landing a shot, yet Vera blocked it with his arm, the limb wrapped tightly in chains. The sight left Nana stunned. They were not evenly matched, and frustration grew within her. Teacher Du, watching closely, noted Vera's uncanny ability to wield his chains for both attack and defense. His reflexes were sharper than expected, and separating him from the princess would be troublesome. The leader advanced on Vera. As Vera unwound his chains to meet the charge, Belmano, despite his defeat, latched onto his arm. With a brutal strike to Belmano's face, Vera broke free. Behind him, the princess called his name. He noticed the leader closing in, reaching for her. She swerved gracefully out of reach, forcing Vera to hold his ground as her companions blocked his pursuit. Teacher Du pressed forward with his axe while Nana launched another arrow in tandem. Vera dodged the axe swing and deflected the arrow with his chains. Meanwhile, Nasara advanced toward Princess Elda. The princess shifted into her battle stance, ready to face her. Nasara leapt into the air with a powerful kick, but the princess blocked it with her shield and immediately countered with a sword slash. Nasara dodged swiftly, leaping aside and landing lightly near the princess. With a hint of regret, Nasara said it was unfortunate they had to meet like this and urged the princess to surrender. But Princess Elda refused, her voice cold and defiant, reminding Nasara that people like her could never understand honor or loyalty. Their eyes locked, Nasara lunged forward with swift intent, and the princess stood her ground, unyielding, bracing for the clash. Golden was on a rooftop near the battle, waiting for his chance as he observed the fight unfold. Both Nana and Teacher Du kept Vera occupied with continuous attacks. To Golden, Vera still looked like nothing more than a child. Memory flashed before his eyes, his question at the tavern. Instead of stopping reinforcements after learning where they would appear, would it not have been better to simply shoot the slave in the head from the start? Nasara had clarified that Grandpa Golden was their insurance. The moment the bandits heard the gunshot, they would gather instantly. If they succeeded in eliminating the slave and the princess fled in the chaos, the mission would fail. The slave was too powerful an enemy, and Nasara did not want Golden placed in unnecessary danger. After all, he was nearing retirement and deserved a proper ending. Golden had scoffed at the idea, claiming the boy could not even ruffle his clothes. Nasara had replied that it was all of them against one and urged him to believe in their teammates and in her plan. Golden had insisted that if even one of them was in danger or on the verge of death, he would shoot without hesitation. Time would not change that resolve. Nasara had reminded him again of the slave's strength, asking if he could accept the risk, but Golden refused to back down. He had declared that he would shoot regardless. Now, in the present, Golden held his gun ready, counting the moments. Below, Vera continued to fight against the others. He judged that Teacher Du was not a difficult opponent, but the archer's accuracy was a serious problem, and his concern for the princess weighed heavily on him. Vera launched an attack against Teacher Du, who dodged swiftly. In that instant, Vera cast a glance toward the princess. Teacher Du noticed the lapse and struck with his short sword. Vera deflected the blow with his chain but lost his balance. Teacher Du pressed the advantage, swinging his axe before Vera could recover. In that moment, Vera had no means of defending himself. Vera reminded himself that he had always been in situations like this. Untying part of his chain, he braced for the next strike. Teacher Du swung with mighty force, but Vera gripped the chain at both ends and used it to parry the blow. In the same motion, he drove his knee into Teacher Du's stomach. Teacher Du was stunned by the precision. Vera had adjusted the chain's length perfectly in that fleeting instant, turning it into a flawless defense against the axe. Yet Vera did not relent. He seized the axe, and though Teacher Du was determined not to let the opportunity slip, Vera struck him with a sharp elbow before grabbing hold of his hair. Teacher Du wondered where the archer was and why she had not fired. Nana, however, was moving into position, careful not to endanger her ally. She rushed to a better angle, preparing to shoot straight for Vera's head, but Vera anticipated it. He hurled Teacher Du toward her, cutting off her line of sight. She dodged aside, and the moment her view cleared, she released her arrow. Vera, predicting the shot, rolled back, narrowly avoiding the strike and regaining his stance. Teacher Du caught his breath, acknowledging the slave's skill. No matter how hard he tried, he found no opening to gain control. Nasara glanced at the other battles, but in that moment the princess struck, slicing Nasara's hand. The princess could only land a hit if Nasara grew careless. She seemed to question whether Nasara underestimated her, confident in her own abilities. Nasara commented that the princess's attendant had just fallen, yet Princess Elda remained unfazed. Princess Elda believed that her attendant could not be threatened by mere lowly bandits. Nasara remarked on the princess's talent for irritating people, and Princess Elda replied that even her own family had acknowledged her skill at gradually vexing others. As the clash continued, Four Eyes tended to Belmano. Belmano inquired about the situation, noting how long the fight had been going on and asking when he could return. Four Eyes estimated roughly 6 minutes but agreed to try to reduce it to 3. Though his hands shook from the effort, he would do his best to let Belmano rejoin the battle as soon as possible. On the rooftop, Golden counted the time, waiting for the moment the bandits approached so he could fire. Time was running short. Vera began spinning his chains, closing in on Teacher Du and Nana while weighing his options. Option 1, rush to the princess, though the chance of being struck in the process was high. Option 2, retreat to maintain awareness of attacks but risk allowing the two opponents to get dangerously close to the princess. He could not afford a drawn-out fight there. Option 3, rely on the princess's martial skill, which, while not perfect, was enough to survive briefly. Deciding that he could finish the two quickly, Vera resolved to neutralize them and immediately aid the princess. He swung his chains, but both opponents dodged. Closing in, he wrapped his chain around his arm. Teacher Du noticed Vera's change in pace. Vera attacked with the chain. Teacher Du blocked with his hands, but realizing he could not withstand a second blow, he hesitated. Vera had not forgotten the archer. He used the chains to intercept her arrow before it was fired. Vera continued his relentless assault, swinging chains while the two dodged repeatedly. Nana wondered what Nasara was doing, realizing they were running out of time. They knew they could not handle the situation alone and had no choice but to rely on the hunter. Meanwhile, Golden decided that the moment had come. It was time he would shoot. Shifting back to the princess, she was holding her own admirably, even managing to wound her opponent's face. The princess felt satisfied. If her attack had pierced through, it meant that training with actual adventurers had paid off. Nasara read her expression clearly. She would get serious now since time was running short. Having initiated the fight, the princess would have no right to complain if she got hurt. The princess was irritated by the remark, clearly not taking Nasara seriously. Nasara did not want to risk injury on her turf. If the princess knew them better, she would understand that they were adventurers, not lowly hoodlums at heart. The princess, growing impatient with Nasara's bluster, tried to ignore her, but Nasara launched an attack. The princess leaned back to dodge the punch, but Nasara followed up with a kick. She raised her shield just in time, surprised at the force behind it. It was the princess's turn now. Nasara noticed how much the princess's movements had expanded. She was fast. While the princess had only the basics, her skill and intuition allowed her to compensate for her lack of experience, though only to a certain limit. She could not react to every trick. When Nasara switched from upper attacks to a sudden low strike, the princess had to respond quickly. Nasara attacked with a leg kick, but the princess relied on her body as a shield. Just as she prepared to strike back, a gunshot rang out. Vera crumpled to the ground, a bullet piercing his heart. Golden, hidden on the rooftop, prayed silently that Vera might rest in peace. The archer immediately ordered Teacher Du to double tap, finishing the fallen fighter. A wave of fear surged through the princess. She screamed Vera's name, her cry echoing across the battlefield. Teacher Du hesitated for a moment and swung his axe, aiming to deliver the finishing blow to Vera. But Vera was far from defeated. He stepped forward, delivering a crushing strike to Teacher Du, then followed up with an uppercut that knocked the older fighter out cold. Golden, watching from the rooftop, was certain he had shot Vera straight through the heart. Even if Vera wore armor, the bullet should have pierced it. The archer Nana thought she had him cornered, but in her eagerness she got too close and lost control. Vera dashed toward her as he delivered a precise kick that knocked her out as well. The princess breathed a sigh of relief. Vera was still standing. Nasara struck again, launching another leg kick at the princess. Her body's shield had already been weakened from the earlier gunshot, and the princess struggled to hold her defense. Nasara had only 3 minutes left to finish the fight. Vera asked Princess Elda if she was okay, covering his face to block attacks from Golden. The chains were cumbersome, but Vera hesitated between chasing the sniper or protecting the princess. The princess quickly gave her order, capture the sniper first. Since Golden had not yet fired at her, she reasoned he would not while she remained guarded. She instructed Vera to neutralize the last enemy and return immediately. They exchanged a brief glance, and Vera sprinted toward the sniper. Nasara realized that the princess could judge her surroundings well and might make Vera her opponent as well. That posed a problem. She needed to finish the princess quickly. She launched another leg strike, this time with no shield to block. Princess Elda pulled back her leg, bracing for the impact. Nasara attacked from within, and the princess endured the strike. With only 2 minutes remaining, Vera closed in on the sniper, Golden. Golden considered Vera a complete nuisance. However, he observed that Vera was focused on protecting his head, which suggested a lack of full-body protection. With this in mind, Golden aimed for Vera's head or torso and fired. The shot struck Vera in the leg, causing him to stumble, but he continued his advance without hesitation. This left Golden bewildered, unsure of what sort of resilience Vera possessed. Golden attempted to hide and change his position, but Vera prevented his escape. Vera threw his chain, wrapping it around the spear of a statue. Activating a spin on the chain, he began to get pulled and spun at just the right height. At the peak of his swing, Vera broke the chain, landing directly behind Golden. Golden was taken by surprise as Vera swung the chain again, destroying Golden's footing. Golden landed on the ground but used the falling debris as stepping stones to dodge the rest. He had never felt this level of fear, not even when he was being chased by a bear. Vera loomed over him, and for the first time, Golden understood what it felt like for a hunter to become the hunted. Hearing the sound of a falling building, a group of bandits rushed toward the commotion, certain that the princess would be there. However, a mysterious man blocked their path. They warned him to step aside, but he did not budge. He declared that it would be better if the number of bugs decreased, and then jumped in front of them, slaughtering the bandits one by one before leaving the scene. The princess was holding on. It was the 7th hit. She had never experienced so much pain. Her leg was immobile, but she knew that if she stopped now, it would all be over. If she didn't move, she would surely die. The princess swung her sword, but Nasara easily dodged the strike. Nasara assessed that the princess's strength was faltering, likely because her legs could no longer support her movements. Nasara shouted, "One more kick." The princess thought she would rather take the hit to save her leg, but she was struck with a punch to the head instead. Nasara followed with another hit to the face. The princess, trusting in her sword, managed to injure Nasara's face. However, Nasara finished the fight with a final kick to the princess's head. The princess, struck on the head, fell to the ground. Nasara did not allow her to get up, pummeling her with a barrage of punches to the face. When it seemed the princess could not continue, Nasara's eyes fell upon the shield and she reached for it, but she noticed something was wrong. Meanwhile, Vera and Golden were locked in an intense fight. Golden was no match for Vera, who struck and severed Golden's leg. Fearing for his life, Golden accepted his defeat and asked Vera to kill him, apologizing to his friends. Vera, surprised by this, asked him why he did not want to live. Golden was taken aback. Vera then turned and headed back to the princess. When Golden realized Vera was not going to kill him, he welcomed his retirement. Vera raced toward the princess, who was still too far away. He deduced because Vera was still alive, the magic spell must be active, which meant the princess was alive too. Back to the princess, Nasara found that she could not touch the shield. A magical barrier was protecting it. At that moment, Teacher Du threw his axe to Nasara, who caught it. He told her that the 3 minutes had passed and signaled for her to cut off the princess's hand. According to their plan, this was when they were supposed to escape, ensuring a high probability of survival. But since she was already there, Nasara could not give up. Nasara warned the princess that her limbs were much more important than a mere sword and shield, implying she would sever them. She added that they were not interested in the princess herself, only her weapon. She then placed the axe against the princess's arm. To Nasara's confusion, the princess simply smiled. The princess replied that she would be embarrassed if that bastard saw her so shamefully defeated and her weapon snatched away. Nasara grew angry at the crazy princess, telling her she was indeed going to cut off her limb. The princess believed it was better to resist to the very end and told Nasara to hurry and cut them off before that guy arrived. Nasara raised the axe, declaring it was not a bluff. She was panicking, thinking that if things went like this, she could end up being chased forever by the kingdom and the goddess church. Teacher and Gore encouraged her to just do it. Just before swinging the axe, Nasara declared that the princess would regret this forever. At that moment, someone appeared behind her and cut off Nasara's hand. It was the mysterious man. The monstrous man exclaimed, "How dare an insignificant being do that to their princess?" Atoned for it with her death, he stomped on her and prepared to finish her off. Nasara realized that trouble always followed when she broke the 3-minute rule. But before the monstrous man could execute her, Belmano charged at him. The man announced that Belmano was running to his death as he prepared his move. An arrow struck and the man defended with his sword. It was Nana. This gave Belmano the opportunity to shove the mysterious man. However, the man was not pushed far away. Instead, he pushed Belmano's head down and tripped him, causing him to lose his footing and fall before shoving his head into the ground. The mysterious man analyzed the situation. The adventurers were escaping, taking Nasara away with them. He decided between chasing or killing them and chose to stay, remarking that his mission was to protect the princess and that the mission came first. He inquired about the princess's well-being. She was fine and thanked him for saving her. He told her that nearby enemies had been dealt with, but since there were too many, they must leave before more arrived. She asked him who he was, and he replied that she would find out if they went with him. Vera was running back and saw the adventurers leaving and the princess with a stranger. He saw that they were retreating because someone was hurt, and since the princess was no longer fighting, that person was likely an ally. Vera came back asking about the princess's well-being, remarking that he had arrived quickly. The princess noticed the mysterious man preparing his sword as Vera approached and warned him. At the same moment, the mysterious man attacked Vera with a sword thrust to his heart. The sword plunged into Vera, but the mysterious man noticed something was hidden inside. He slashed the sword and chains, not guts, scattered from the cut. This explained why Vera had survived being shot in the chest earlier. Despite the warning from the princess, Vera had been careful, but getting stabbed directly in the chest was another matter. The chain was wrapped so tightly that if it had been any looser, he would have surely died. Vera asked Princess Elda who the man was and if he was an enemy. The princess asked the man if her second brother had sent him. The man was surprised, confirming that his orders were to save her while killing Vera. He pleaded with the princess not to hate him as he was just following orders. Vera saw no opening and could not leave the princess behind. He moved forward, dodging sword strikes, and delivered a punch with his bare hand and another with his chain-wrapped hand, but both were defended. The mysterious man commented that Vera seemed to be getting a little faster, perhaps because of the chains. He called Vera talented but insisted this was his end, then shoved Vera to make him lose his balance and swung his sword. Vera dodged and countered with a kick while using his hand to regain his balance. The mysterious man dodged again and Vera landed, steadying himself. The man continued with another sword swing. Vera defended with his chain, but the links broke. The man then kicked Vera directly in the face. Before finishing him off, the man hoped Vera would be reborn as a commoner in his next life. Vera was defenseless, but at that moment the princess jumped in, attacking the mysterious man. He noticed and shifted his body to avoid the strike. The princess swung her sword, creating distance between him and Vera, and told Vera to regain his senses. Vera replied that the man was too strong. The princess, however, decided that no matter if he had saved them once, she would not forgive him for laying hands on what was hers. She called out to Vera, reminding him that she had saved him once again. Vera, annoyed, wrapped his chain, thinking they would be fine as long as he punches the man on the face at least once. At that moment, a woman on a roof jumped, and upon locating the princess, blew a horn. Bandits arrived in droves, finally finding them and surrounding them from every direction. The mysterious man thought he had cleared out enough of them, but they were still swarming. He was out of time. Vera called to the princess, and after seeing the bandits, realized the mysterious man would no longer attack her. He asked her to take one of his attacks for him, and she agreed. Vera hid behind the princess. Even the mysterious man thought it was a good thing for him. He would just send her flying and finish off Vera. The princess dashed toward him. The mysterious man pushed the princess to the side. Vera, creeping under the princess and using her as a shield, launched an attack, pleading for it to connect. It did. He got him, but the man did not fall. The mysterious man remarked that he never thought he would see a slave use royalty as a shield. It was a first. He grabbed Vera's arm firmly and admitted that since Vera had exceeded his expectations, he had earned his respect. He gripped Vera tightly and told him the punch hurt. Vera could do nothing. The man's strength was overwhelming. Suddenly, ice shards flew, followed by ice magic, separating all three of them. They all observed, discerning if the newcomers were allies or enemies. It was the first prince with his soldiers, riding with the cavalry, shooting his magic gun and crushing through the bandits. The first prince fired icy attacks from his magic gun at the mysterious masked man. The masked man deftly dodged the shot, leaping away. The bandits, already terrified by the prince's reputation, grew even more panicked at his arrival. The first prince, outraged by the bandits' audacity, declared that they should all be caught for daring to set foot on sacred ground. The soldiers, without mercy, struck down every last bandit. The mysterious man analyzed the situation, concluding that the soldiers were no ordinary fighters. At least two of them were awakened. The first prince addressed the mysterious man directly, ordering him to remove his mask and kneel. The masked man felt a pang of disappointment, frustrated that he couldn't even complete a single mission. However, there was no way he would allow himself to be captured. He leaped away, and the first prince realized he was dealing with a skilled, awakened individual. Dismounting his horse, the prince noticed his sister. Her face was battered and swollen. He was immediately consumed with worry. She chastised him, reminding him that he was disobeying the kingdom's rules by helping her. But seeing her face, the prince thought, to hell with the rules. She had done well, holding on against so many enemies. He thought to himself that this was exactly like Elda. Sensing his concern, she urgently told him that he must leave, that he would be punished. Tears welled up in her eyes. He told her not to worry about him, and to nag or cry all she wanted. First prince then greeted Vera. who kneeled in his presence. The prince pleaded with Vera to look after his sister. The princess was taken aback that a royal would ask a favor of a slave. She wept in his arms as he then instructed them to get on the horse and leave, warning that more bandits were on their way. After they had mounted the horse, Elda asked if he would be okay. He assured her that his soldiers were the strongest in the south and reminded her of what he had said to her in the tower. Thinking back on it, he realized he didn't know how to love properly. He would be waiting for their next meeting, hoping to have learned how to love by then. He wished her a safe journey and hoped she would find the treasure and become queen. Vera rode the horse away, escaping the city. As Vera rode, he looked back at the princess's swollen face and teared up, regretting he hadn't been able to watch her get hit. When the princess asked him what was wrong, Vera changed the subject to the vastness of the Holy Land. The princess agreed that their kingdom was the biggest in the south, and that even a day of travel by foot would not be enough to cross it. The princess's thoughts trailed off before she could finish them, as she suddenly fell from the horse and crashed to the ground. Vera stopped, assuming the princess was simply exhausted from her long struggle. He knew she was a determined child. He dismounted and, calling her princess, asked if she was okay. She replied that she was no longer a princess and asked if he was making fun of her. Seeing her face, Vera couldn't help but chuckle as he turned away from her. He asked her why she fell so suddenly. She explained that, just like the magic contract he had, she also had a magic constraint. The constraint had reacted the moment she thought about riding the horse. Her strength had vanished. She explained that neither she nor he could ride a horse for the rest of their journey, which must be completed by foot. She clarified that borrowing a horse for a short time was acceptable, like what they had just done. Vera understood and asked if she had any other constraints that she should tell him about. After a moment's thought, she replied that it was none of his business. All he had to do was follow her instructions. She then told him that they needed to hurry because others were waiting for them. Vera was puzzled by her sudden change in attitude. Outside a fortress wall, Elda's servant and the youngest prince were waiting. The guard announced that someone had arrived by horse, though Elda and Vera had left on foot. Elda shouted out to the youngest prince, announcing her arrival. Her servant and the youngest prince, Alec, were shocked to see Elda's swollen face. She quickly explained that they didn't have time to spare and were being chased. She asked them to hurry and hand over her belongings. Vera asked the guard to return the horse to the first prince on their behalf. Vera dismounted and greeted the second prince. The servant called for a healer for Elda. She requested a change of clothes, which they had already prepared for her. As a priest began to apply medicine, she asked him to also heal her leg. Vera did not need healing. His clothes were ripped, but he had no significant wounds. As he pulled a chain from his pants, the princes were surprised. They asked where the chains came from and what his powers were. Vera explained that he usually wrapped his body in chains for defense and for extra strength, which was why he had been fine when a shot hit his leg. The prince was astonished by Vera's incredible physical strength and asked him to wait. The prince gave Vera a change of clothes, which they had prepared just in case. They also brought him more chains. The prince pleaded with him to take care of his sister. With tears in his eyes, he asked Vera to return his sister to him safely after they had found the treasure. Vera thought that it was the second time today someone had asked him to take care of the damn girl. After their preparations at the gate were complete, they all thanked one another for making their departure so smooth. The prince asked his sister to be careful. She told him not to cry, to remember their promise, and to take care of himself. Both the servant and the prince wept as Elda and Vera headed out into the world.